A low rumble of thunder flickered somewhere along the horizon, but Wyatt Hastings barely noticed it. All he could see was the swirl of dust erupting behind his old pickup as he sped down the gravel road, tires crunching on loose stones. His phone had rung twice in the last 5 minutes, Felicia McKenna's voice nearly frantic on the other end. "Wyatt, something's going on at your place. Aurora was supposed to come by the bar, but Trevor said she left with Roxanne. Then this guy showed up asking for you. I think Aurora might be in trouble. Get home. Now." Wyatt still heard Felicia's worried tone echoing in his head. He gripped the wheel tighter, wishing the truck had wings. The late afternoon sun cast the fields in a hazy glow, turning the tall grass into a golden blur. When his truck finally lurched to a halt in front of the Hastings farmhouse, Wyatt didn't bother turning off the engine. He jumped out, boots landing hard on the dirt. The front door stood half ajar, squeaking in the wind. That alone shot an icy trickle of dread through his veins. Aurora always locked the house, day or night. He stepped onto the porch, each creak of the floorboards rattling his nerves. The air felt thick, like the calm before a storm. The living room lights were on, but the interior looked too still, every shadow stretched and ominous. Through the doorway, he could make out knocked-over furniture. An old side table splayed on its side, a broken vase of daisies scattered across the floor. "Aurora?" His voice echoed back with no reply. A muffled sound came from the kitchen, a thump, then a scrape of a chair leg. His gut twisted. He glanced around for anything to use, but realized he already had his Glock behind the passenger seat. With swift steps, Wyatt spun back to the truck, retrieved the weapon, and returned to the porch. The silence was eerie now. Even the cicadas seemed to hold their breath. Wyatt eased into the foyer, the Glock steady in his right hand, muzzle pointed at the floor. Another low crash echoed from deeper in the house. He inched down the hallway, passing pictures of his granddad and father. Those photos always brought him comfort today. They felt like watchful eyes, pressing him forward. As he reached the kitchen threshold, he heard movement. Something slid across the tabletop with a clatter, followed by a harsh whisper. Wyatt's heart drummed so hard it almost drowned out the noise. He swallowed, adrenaline surging. Finally, he stepped around the corner, gun leveled. What he saw jolted him like a lightning strike. A man he didn't recognize, tall, lean, wearing a dark jacket, stood over Aurora, who was slumped against the island counter, hair disheveled, cheeks flushed. Her eyes were wide in alarm. Behind them, Roxanne Carter hovered near the back door, arms wrapped around herself in what looked like shock or guilt or both. "Get away from her!" Wyatt's voice came out ragged yet forceful. The stranger jerked his head up. An instant hush wrapped the room, broken only by Aurora's shaky breath. The man had to be the guy Felicia mentioned didn't back off. He smirked, as though sizing up Wyatt's threat. Roxanne's gaze darted between them. "Wyatt, I tried to stop him, but he— Who the hell are you?" Wyatt barked, ignoring Roxanne's protest. The tall man didn't answer. Instead, he shifted his stance. For a split second, Wyatt thought the man might have a weapon. Then Aurora exhaled a tremulous gasp, as though warning Wyatt of something. Wyatt's finger tensed on the trigger. "Wyatt!" Aurora's voice cracked, but she forced out a plea. Just listen. He said he's looking for you, Damien Fletcher or something. He stormed in." The man Damien flashed another twisted grin, a tension coiling in his posture. "I don't appreciate being threatened in my own business arrangement," he said, voice low and laced with menace. Wyatt felt the weight of the gun in his hand. "Your business arrangement is finished," he growled back. "You hurt my wife. You pay for it." Damien twitched his jaw. Roxanne edged sideways, eyes flicking to Aurora. Wyatt saw a faint bruise on Aurora's forearm. Blood pounded in his ears. He didn't know exactly how they reached this boiling point, but he knew one thing. If Damien made a single move toward Aurora again, Wyatt would pull the trigger. "Get out!" Wyatt commanded, voice shaking with anger. "Now." Damien's eyes narrowed. The air felt thick enough to choke on. Aurora managed to take a step away from him, closer to Wyatt's side. Outside, the sky rumbled a second time, thunder rolling like distant artillery. For a heartbeat, nobody breathed. Then Damien shifted, turning as if to leave. Wyatt kept his Glock aimed dead center, adrenaline roaring. At the corner of his vision, he spotted Roxanne biting her lip, trembling, but it wasn't clear if she was afraid for Aurora or for herself. No one realized until that moment just how precarious everything was. In a single second, one wrong twitch could ignite this powder keg. Wyatt refused to lower his gun until Damien had practically vanished from the porch, heavy footsteps fading into the yard. Once he heard an engine roar off into the distance, only then did Wyatt swallow hard and turn to Aurora. She stood unsteadily by the kitchen island, hugging her own arms as though trying to disappear inside them. Roxanne hovered near the door, blinking back tears or shock Wyatt couldn't tell. He didn't trust his own voice just yet, so he pressed his palm to Aurora's shoulder. "You okay?" he managed, glancing at the bruise on her arm. She nodded weakly. "I think so. He just forced his way in and started demanding that you come home. Said he had some unfinished business." "I didn't even know who he was." Roxanne made a tiny sound, something between a sob and a gasp. "I'm sorry, I swear I had no idea he'd do that. I met him a couple of times, but—" She shook her head. "I thought he wanted to talk to Wyatt about some property deal or something. I never expected him to show up like this." Wyatt's teeth clenched. He slowly set his gun on the table, muzzle away from everyone. "Roxanne," he muttered. "How exactly did you meet him?" A nervous flicker crossed her eyes. He knows Jared Beckett, some mechanic I've run into. They both hang out at Cannonballs sometimes." Hearing that name made Wyatt's temples throb. Cannonballs was notorious for sketchy characters and rowdy late-night crowds. Aurora had mentioned Roxanne dragging her there a few times just to unwind. Now it felt more ominous. He took a moment, stepping away from the tension in the kitchen to grab a glass of water. One shaky gulp later, he turned back. "We need to talk, all of us. But not right now. Not while we're all in shock." Aurora looked pale. She reached for the water pitcher. "Thank you," she mumbled, voice soft. "I'm sorry for letting him in. I was just caught off guard." Guilt tugged at Wyatt's stomach. Had he left Aurora vulnerable by focusing too much on his out-of-town work? He'd been traveling for days at a time, leaving her here with only Roxanne's company. An awkward hush blanketed them as the emotional weight sank in. The living room lay in disarray, chairs knocked askew, that broken vase with daisies scattered. Wyatt felt torn between anger and relief that Aurora was physically unharmed. Roxanne cleared her throat. I'll head out. Give you two some space." She paused, anxiously looking from Aurora to Wyatt. "Look, for what it's worth, I'm sorry. Let me know if you need anything." Wyatt nodded tersely, not sure what to say. Aurora offered her friend a shaky hug. Roxanne's breath caught. Then she slipped through the doorway and was gone. A few weeks earlier, Wyatt's memories reeled back to simpler days. He recalled a time when Aurora Campbell was just a bright-eyed marketing student. She'd show up at the Mousetrap Trevor and Felicia's bar near campus, taking shifts as a server whenever she had time between classes. Wyatt had run into her on a Friday night. She'd worn an easy smile, offered him a cold beer, and that was that he'd been hooked by her laugh, her kindness. They married 2 years later and moved on to the Hastings farm, a sprawling property Wyatt inherited from his granddad, who'd passed away leaving behind stables, a barn, and an old but sturdy farmhouse. Aurora embraced country life surprisingly well, planting herbs in the backyard and painting the living room walls a warm shade of cream. Only one person seemed less than thrilled: Roxanne Carter, Aurora's best friend since high school. Her frosty attitude toward Wyatt had been evident from the start, subtle eye rolls, half smiles that never reached her eyes. Aurora explained it away as Roxy just being overprotective, so Wyatt tried not to dwell on it. Now, bridging back to the present, Wyatt realized he wasn't sure he could still brush off Roxanne's involvement. Something about her connection to that man Damien Fletcher felt too suspicious. He sighed, returning to the kitchen. Aurora was still there, gingerly wiping the scattered petals off the tiled floor. Her shoulders shook slightly, as though she was trying not to cry. Wyatt crouched beside her, pulling her close. "It's all right," he murmured. "We'll figure out what's going on. I won't let him or anyone else do this again." She nodded, pressing her cheek to his shoulder. For a moment, they just stayed like that, two hearts pounding with aftershocks of fear. Outside, the last streak of twilight faded behind the rolling hills. Tomorrow would bring questions, confessions, maybe even confrontations. But for now, Wyatt silently vowed to keep Aurora safe, no matter what. Sunlight filtered through the bedroom curtains, waking Wyatt the next morning with a dull ache in his chest. Images of the night before lingered. Aurora's shaken face, Roxanne's fearful eyes, and that man Damien staring him down. Wyatt had never pointed a gun at anyone before. Over coffee in the kitchen, Aurora explained she'd hardly slept. She kept replaying Damien's words, his insinuations that he had business with Wyatt. "What kind of business?" she asked, stirring her cup absently. Wyatt couldn't meet her gaze. "No idea. Might be a misunderstanding about land deals, or maybe he's trying to use you to get to me." He drummed his fingers on the tabletop. "Damien's obviously trouble. Did he say anything else about Jared Beckett or cannonballs?" Aurora shook her head. "He just mentioned Jared might show up too, but that's it. She hesitated, guilt creeping into her voice. "I know I haven't told you much about my nights out, but I needed a break, Wyatt. You've been traveling so often, and Roxanne insists Cannonballs is just a fun, lively place. Maybe I was naive." Wyatt's expression softened. He reached for her hand. "We all need time to unwind, but I hate the thought of you being there with people like Damien lurking around." She inhaled, shoulders tense. "Yeah, well, after last night, I'm done with that scene." Later that day, Wyatt drove into town, going straight to the mousetrap. Trevor and Felicia were behind the bar, reorganizing liquor bottles. The place smelled faintly of citrus cleaner and fried onions, typical midday hush before the evening rush. Felicia looked up, relief crossing her face. "Wyatt, thank God. We were worried sick after that phone call." Trevor strode over and clapped Wyatt on the shoulder. "You all right, pal? Heard some nasty rumor about a break-in at your farm." Wyatt explained the broad strokes. Damien's intrusion, Aurora's distress, Roxanne being there. He kept the detail about pulling a gun to himself, still uneasy about the memory. Trevor frowned. "Fletcher? That name rings a bell. He's been sniffing around cannonballs, from what I hear. Some folks claim he's dealing more than just conversation." Felicia set down a glass with a sharp click. "I bet Roxanne's aware of it. She's been meeting suspicious types for weeks now. She always shrugs it off like they're just random acquaintances, but something's off." Wyatt gritted his teeth. "I'll keep an eye on her, but I'm more worried about Aurora. I can't always be around, especially with these out-of-town jobs." Trevor exchanged a glance with Felicia. "Look, man, if you need anything, let me know. I hate seeing Aurora or you in danger." Outside, the midday sun cast short shadows on the pavement. Wyatt paused on the bar's porch, noticing a woman standing by a black sedan, her face partially hidden by a wide-brimmed hat. She seemed to watch him, then swiftly got in her car and drove off. Wyatt felt a twinge of paranoia. Were strangers surveilling him now? He shook the thought away, heading back into his truck. On the drive home, he tried to piece together the puzzle. Roxanne Carter was Aurora's oldest friend. Why would she bring shady men into Aurora's life? Did Roxanne owe them money, or was she involved in something bigger? As Wyatt turned onto the dirt road leading up the hill, a plume of dust trailed behind the pickup again. This time, however, he felt a sharp edge of worry instead of routine. He was stepping into a fight he didn't understand yet. Aurora was on the porch when he arrived, hugging a lightweight cardigan around her shoulders despite the warm afternoon. She gave a small wave, forcing a half-smile as he pulled to a stop. Wyatt's heart ached at how drained she looked, like someone bracing for the next blow. He got out, taking her hand softly. "Any sign of Roxanne?" "Not since last night," Aurora said. "She sent me a text saying she'd be lying low for a while." Wyatt nodded. "Let's just take it one step at a time." But a sense of dread lingered in the air, a whisper that the trouble was far from over. Midweek came with a humid, overcast sky that made the entire countryside feel heavy. Wyatt woke early, hoping to get a head start on some chores around the farm, mending the fence line, checking on the old barn's roof. Manual labor used to calm him, give him a sense of grounding. Lately, though, even that felt overshadowed by the swirl of questions about Damien and Roxanne. Aurora found him outside by the tool shed around mid-morning. She carried 2 mugs of coffee, steam curling over the rim. "Taking a break?" she offered gently. Wyatt accepted 1 mug with a slight nod. "Thanks. Didn't realize how wound up I was until just now." Together, they wandered toward the far edge of the property, where a fence separated their fields from a narrow dirt path leading down to a creek. A breeze rustled the trees overhead. For a few moments, it almost felt normal, like they could forget the tension. But reality sank in when Aurora mentioned her job. "I have a meeting in town tomorrow, a potential new client. I can't just hide here forever." Her voice carried a tinge of anxiety. Wyatt rested an arm around her shoulders. "Of course not. Go. I'll be in and out, but Trevor's letting me take a few days off from the consultation project. If you need me, I'm just a phone call away." She nodded, letting out a soft exhale. "It's silly, but I keep looking over my shoulder, expecting I don't know Damien, or someone else just as menacing." The thought put Wyatt back on edge, recalling how Roxanne had introduced Aurora to these crowds. He prayed they'd seen the last of Damien Fletcher. By midday, Aurora left for a quick grocery run, determined to keep life moving. Wyatt was wiping down the porch windows when his phone buzzed. A number he didn't recognize lit up the screen. "Hello?" A hesitant female voice came through. "Wyatt? Hi. I'm Denise Parker. I live a couple miles from your farm. I think we've met once at the feed store." He vaguely remembered a petite woman with curly hair who often chatted with Aurora. "Oh, right. Hi, Denise. Well, this might sound odd, but earlier today I saw a black SUV parked near the orchard along your property line. A man got out, looked around like he was scouting the area. It gave me a weird feeling, so I thought I should let you know." Wyatt's pulse flickered. "Thanks for telling me. Did you happen to see who he was?" "Couldn't see his face well, he wore a cap. I just wanted you to be safe," Denise said apologetically. After the call, Wyatt placed his phone on the windowsill, a knot forming in his stomach. If it wasn't Damien, it could be Jared Beckett or some other associate. Their orchard was tucked behind a wooded stretch, easy enough for someone to slip in unseen. He tried to shove the worry aside, focusing instead on cleaning up the living room from last week's chaos. He set the furniture upright, vacuumed up the last remains of shattered vase shards. The daisies that once brightened the table were long gone. Late afternoon, Aurora returned with groceries. As they unpacked them in the kitchen, Wyatt gently brought up Denise's warning. Aurora paled slightly, placing a bag of apples on the counter. "You think Jared might be hanging around too?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," Wyatt admitted, "but we can't pretend everything's normal. Listen, if you see anyone suspicious, you call me or Trevor." "Promise me?" She hesitated, then nodded. "All right, I promise." They stood there, gazing at one another amid the newly stocked kitchen. The tension was tangible. A few days ago, all they worried about was Wyatt's out-of-town job and Aurora's occasional late nights with Roxanne. Now it felt like they were on the edge of a cliff, not sure if the next step would send them plunging into something far worse. Wyatt reached out, brushing a loose strand of hair from Aurora's face. "We'll get through this. I'm not letting anything happen to you or us." Aurora pressed her lips together, fighting back the uncertain tears. "I know," she said, though her voice betrayed how unsure she felt. In the distance, the sky was still overcast, as if mirroring the unease cloaking their once peaceful farm. Aurora hesitated outside Cannonballs, her stomach in knots. A flickering neon sign buzzed overhead, casting a blue sheen on the sidewalk. She could practically hear Wyatt's disapproval echoing in her mind. That place is bad news. Still, Roxanne Carter stood next to her, glossy lips turned upward in a confident smile. "Come on, Aurora," Roxanne said, tapping a high heel on the pavement. "It's just a little fun. You've looked stressed all week." Aurora swallowed. "I'm not sure I'm in the mood, Roxy. Wyatt hates this place. And honestly—" "Wyatt's not here," Roxanne interrupted with a playful shrug. "Plus, it's only for one drink, maybe two." Relax, girl. Music thumped from within, the bass resonating through Aurora's ribcage the moment they crossed the threshold. Inside, Cannonballs lived up to its notorious reputation: shadowy corners, neon graffiti on exposed brick, and clusters of people swaying in half-lit darkness. Waitresses in tight black tees wove between the crowd, balancing trays of neon-colored cocktails. Aurora tugged at her short denim jacket, suddenly self-conscious. She hadn't exactly dressed for a wild night, just jeans and a simple blouse, but she felt overdressed compared to some in the crowd, or maybe underdressed considering the swirling chaos. They headed to the bar, where a young bartender with a pierced lip offered a lazy grin. Roxanne ordered a round of tequila shots before Aurora could protest. She mustered a polite smile as she glanced around, hoping she wouldn't see anyone she knew. That's when she noticed Jared Beckett. Leaning against a pillar, he wore a mechanic's shirt partially unbuttoned, revealing a chain necklace. She recognized him from the night he showed up at Mousetrap, bragging about some side hustle. Wyatt had muttered something about Jared dealing with shady folks, including Damian Fletcher. Jared looked over now, spotting them. His lips twitched in what could have been a grin or a sneer. Roxanne handed Aurora a shot glass. "Bottoms up!" Aurora knocked back the tequila, grimacing at the burn. She felt off balance already, nerves rattling from the loud music, the swirling lights. A second later, Roxanne was waving at Jared, beckoning him closer. Against Aurora's better judgment, her friend introduced them with a casual flick of her wrist. "Jared, you've met Aurora, sort of," Roxanne said, leaning in. The music pulsed around them. "Yeah, I remember," he replied, voice low. He gestured to the bartender for another round. "Pleasure to see you here, Aurora." She forced a polite nod. Something in Jared's gaze made her uneasy, or maybe it was the tequila pooling in her gut. He said something about how the night was still young and how they should live it up. It sounded more like a dare than an invitation. Time blurred into fragments of color and sound. At one point, Roxanne led her to a half-empty booth near the dance floor, where they sipped from tall glasses that tasted sweet and fruity. Jared hovered, occasionally disappearing into the crowd. Each time he returned, Aurora felt more disoriented. Her skin felt too warm, her vision hazy. She couldn't recall if she'd finished her first or second drink. From across the bar, she noticed Damian Fletcher, the same man who'd shown up at her farmhouse. He was half hidden in a dim booth, arms folded, eyes keen on her. A chill rippled through her. She blinked, trying to focus, but it was as though the room had grown foggy. "Roxy," she mumbled, "maybe we should go. I'm not feeling so good." Roxanne, red curls bouncing, gave a sympathetic nod. "All right, let me just talk to Jared for a sec, then we'll leave." She got up and vanished into the throng. Aurora pressed her palms to the table, a dull throb building behind her eyes. Had she really had that much to drink? She could have sworn it was just 2 or 3 sips after the tequila shot. Her heart hammered in an irregular beat. The overhead strobe lights felt like they were drilling into her head. A waitress breezed by, setting down a new glass Aurora didn't remember ordering. She stared at it. A swirl of suspicious pink liquid glistened under neon, beckoning yet foreboding. She pushed it away on instinct. "Need some water?" a voice asked. She glanced up to see a young woman in a black Cannonballs shirt, name tag reading Mara. Her expression showed mild concern. "You look a little pale." "Yeah, water sounds, thanks," Aurora managed. The edges of her vision kept swimming. She tried to stand, but her knees buckled slightly. Mara reached out to steady her. Moments later, Roxanne returned, Jared in tow, each wearing matching half-grins that made Aurora uneasy. She tried to ask Roxanne if they could leave now, but the words felt thick on her tongue, as though her mouth wasn't cooperating. "Hang on," Roxanne said. "I've gotta—" She trailed off, eyes flicking to Jared, who whispered something near her ear. Then they both looked at Aurora with a strangely expectant gaze. Aurora's thoughts blurred further. Wyatt, she thought desperately. She wished Wyatt would burst in and haul her out of here. But she was on her own, reeling from the dizzy swirl in her head. She saw Damian slip out of his booth and stroll toward the exit, casting one last glance her way. And in that fleeting moment, Aurora felt a wave of panic that maybe she'd stepped onto a path she had no idea how to get off. The next morning, Wyatt Hastings found himself staring at the blinking cursor on his laptop, not comprehending a single word of the property appraisal draft he was supposed to finish. Ever since Aurora came home around 2 in the morning looking frazzled and barely coherent, Wyatt's mind had been in a whirlpool of anxiety. He set aside his work and picked up his phone, dialing Felicia McKenna. She answered on the second ring. "Wyatt, hey," Felicia said. "What's going on?" "Listen," he began, keeping his voice low. "Aurora got home real late last night after going out with Roxanne. She was off, disoriented. Won't admit anything's wrong, but something's up." Felicia sighed. "You think she was drugged?" Wyatt closed his eyes, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "I'm not entirely sure. She claims she just drank too much. But Aurora's not the type to forget half a night from 1 or 2 drinks. Cannonballs, right?" That's what Trevor said. He heard from one of the bartenders that Roxanne and Aurora were there with Jared Beckett. If Jared's involved, you know he runs with some unsavory people. Wyatt felt his blood pressure spike. "Damn it, I knew it. She's not safe around that crowd." Felicia hesitated. "You might want to confront Roxanne directly. She's your key here." "Yeah, I plan to," he answered, a grim note in his tone. "But Aurora's memory is all jumbled. She only recalled seeing Jared and some shady guy in a corner, but that's it." "Wyatt, be careful," Felicia said softly. "Roxanne can get defensive, especially if she feels cornered." "Noted. Thanks, Felicia." After hanging up, Wyatt stood, nerves coiled tight. He remembered that quiet conversation he had with Aurora at the farm, promising to keep her safe. Yet it felt like she was slipping into a dangerous orbit around Roxanne. If he couldn't get the truth soon, it might spiral out of control. Later that day, Wyatt managed to track Roxanne down at a local coffee shop, Maple and Grounds, a cozy spot with mismatched furniture and acoustic music playing softly. He walked in to find Roxanne sipping an iced latte by the window, phone in hand. She looked up as he approached. Her posture stiffened. "Wyatt," she greeted, not exactly warm. "Did Aurora send you?" "No," he replied, sliding into the seat across from her. "She doesn't know I'm here. I need answers about last night." Roxanne's jaw tightened. "It was just a night out, Wyatt. Aurora's a grown woman." "She came home confused, practically stumbling," Wyatt shot back. "Something happened at Cannonballs. Don't you think I deserve to know?" Roxanne rolled her eyes. "God, you always assume the worst. We had a few drinks, Jared was around, but that's it. Aurora can't handle her liquor sometimes, that's no secret." Wyatt clenched his fists under the table. He forced a calm tone. "Felicia said Jared's trouble, and Damian Fletcher's name keeps popping up. Are you mixed up with them? Because if Aurora's being put at risk, I won't stand by." Roxanne leaned forward, her gaze sharp. "Look, I'm not mixed up in anything, all right? Jared's a friend of a friend, and yes, Damian's been around. But Aurora's an adult who chooses where to go. I'm not twisting her arm." "Then why is she losing chunks of memory?" he pressed. "My wife doesn't just black out from a single cocktail." Roxanne huffed, glancing around as if worried someone might overhear. "Maybe she's more stressed than you realize. She's mentioned feeling lonely, Wyatt. All those business trips you take? She craves a little excitement, and if that leads her to Cannonballs, it's not my fault." Her words were a pointed barb, and Wyatt felt them sink in. "You know how important my job is," he muttered, "but I didn't realize she was that lonely." Roxanne shrugged, swirling her iced latte. "Maybe you should talk to Aurora instead of accusing me. I've got enough on my plate, okay?" She grabbed her purse and stood abruptly. "Thanks for the coffee, but I'm done here." Wyatt watched her storm out, frustration pulsing in his veins. Instead of clarity, he'd gained new layers of worry. If Aurora felt isolated enough to follow Roxanne into shady nightlife, then Wyatt was partly responsible. But that didn't absolve Roxanne of her own suspicious connections. As he exited Maple and Grounds, he caught sight of Jared's dark car parked across the street, engine idling. He blinked. Was Jared waiting for Roxanne, or was he scoping Wyatt out? The car peeled away before Wyatt could confirm, leaving a slick sense of unease trailing in its wake. Aurora opened the front door a crack, heart pounding. It was nearly midnight, and Wyatt's truck was parked in the driveway, headlights off, as though he'd been waiting for her in the dark. She stepped into the living room, the soft lamplight illuminating the worry etched on his face. "Aurora?" he said, tone weighted with tension. "You're home late again." She slipped off her heels, noticing how disheveled her hair and skirt were from dancing at cannonballs. The faint smell of stale cigarette smoke clung to her. "I lost track of time," she offered, voice shaky. "I was with Roxanne." Wyatt rose from the armchair, arms folded across his chest. "We need to talk." Her stomach twisted. She'd avoided his calls earlier, feeling a mix of guilt and defiance, but now reality slapped her in the face. "All right," she whispered, dropping her purse on the couch. "I'm listening." "I know you met Jared again tonight," Wyatt said bluntly, stepping closer. "And possibly Damian Fletcher, too. Why are you risking that?" Aurora's lips trembled. "It's not like that. Roxy said we'd meet a couple of her friends. I needed to get out of the house." She sighed, exasperated. "Is that so wrong?" Wyatt's jaw clenched. "Not in theory, but these people are dangerous. Haven't you realized something's off, especially with what happened last time? You barely remembered coming home." She flinched, recalling the gaps in her memory. I think I was just tired, maybe a little drunk. That's all." But she heard the uncertainty in her own voice. In that tense moment, the door burst open again, and Roxanne walked in, cheeks flushed. "Aurora, you left Cannonballs without telling me." She paused, seeing Wyatt. "Oh, great. A family meeting, I see?" Wyatt's glare hardened. "This is between me and my wife." Roxanne scoffed. "Your wife also happens to be my best friend." "Then maybe you should stop dragging her into questionable places," Wyatt shot back. That's when Aurora's fragile composure snapped. "Stop it, both of you," she shouted, fists clenched. "I'm not a child, Wyatt. And Roxy, you can't just barge in here. God!" Silence descended thick as a storm cloud. Aurora's pulse throbbed in her ears. She felt Wyatt's eyes on her, full of concern and anger. Roxanne's expression was guarded, like she was ready for a fight. Finally, Roxanne sighed. "I was worried, okay? You left the bar so fast. I wanted to make sure you got home safe." Before Aurora could respond, Wyatt's voice crackled with frustration. "Are you serious? Safe? You're the reason she's stumbling home at midnight again, looking like—" He bit his tongue, refusing to finish the sentence. Aurora let out a trembling breath. "He's not entirely wrong, Roxy. This is getting out of hand." Roxanne's features tightened defensively. "Look, I know you're married, Aurora, but you deserve a life outside these four walls, especially since Wyatt's gone half the time." The jab hit Wyatt squarely. He slammed a fist on the side table, rattling a lamp. "I am trying to keep food on the table and our bills paid. Don't spin it like I'm abandoning her." Roxanne raised an eyebrow. "I never said," Aurora interjected, her voice breaking. "Enough. I can't do this right now." She pressed her palms to her forehead, fighting tears. "I need some air." Wyatt tried to steady himself. "Aurora, wait!" But she rushed past both of them, out the front door onto the porch. The night air felt cold against her flushed skin. She perched on the porch swing, trying to slow her racing heart. In the living room, she heard muffled voices Wyatt and Roxanne exchanging tense words. Minutes later, Wyatt emerged, shutting the door behind him. "Roxanne left," he said quietly, coming to sit beside Aurora on the swing. The wooden chains creaked beneath their combined weight. Moonlight filtered across her face, revealing tears she could no longer hide. "I hate this," Aurora murmured, voice trembling. "I hate feeling like I'm choosing between my husband and my best friend." Wyatt exhaled, placing a gentle hand on hers. "I don't want you to choose. I just want you to be safe. These people, Damian, Jared, they're not messing around." She nodded, tears slipping onto her cheeks. "I know. I'm tired of feeling trapped. When you're gone, the nights get lonely. Roxy was an escape, maybe a bad one, but it felt good to just forget everything." He pulled her against his chest, pressing a soft kiss to her temple. "We'll figure this out, but it stops now. I won't let you walk into a lion's den again." Aurora closed her eyes, nestling into Wyatt's warmth. Despite her conflicting emotions, she craved the comfort of his arms. Inside, the lamp cast uneven shadows across the walls, a silent reminder that the storms brewing in their lives were far from over. The next morning brought a strange hush over the farmhouse. Aurora woke with puffy eyes, but at least she and Wyatt had parted ways on a more tender note the night before. Still, an uneasy tension lingered, like a faint smell of smoke after a fire has been doused. Wyatt left early for a quick half-day appointment in town. By mid-morning, Aurora tried to busy herself with laundry and dishwashing, her thoughts ping-ponging between guilt and defiance. Around noon, she decided to walk to a nearby cafe for a bite. She was halfway through an avocado panini at Hazelwood Cafe when she spotted Roxanne sliding into a booth in the corner. Another figure joined her, a tall, lean man Aurora immediately recognized as Jared Beckett. Her stomach knotted. Of all places, Aurora found herself eavesdropping from a distance, though the cafe was modestly crowded and the ambient chatter muffled specifics. Roxanne and Jared appeared to be in a heated discussion. Roxanne gestured emphatically while Jared wore a smug, half-lidded expression. Aurora's instincts screamed that this was bad news. She considered just leaving, but curiosity got the better of her. Quietly, she paid for her meal and slipped out, then circled around the block. The cafe's front windows offered a decent view inside. From across the street, Aurora watched Roxanne and Jared stand, exchange a few terse words, then part ways. Jared left first, stepping out with that same predatory swagger. Roxanne lingered, brow furrowed, as though grappling with an unwelcome ultimatum. Wyatt returned home around dinner time, dust on his boots. Aurora met him in the doorway, her nerves frayed. "I saw Roxanne and Jared together," she blurted, leading him into the living room. "They were at Hazelwood Cafe earlier. It looked intense." Wyatt's jaw tightened. "Did you talk to them?" Aurora shook her head. "No, I just watched from a distance. Something felt off." He muttered a curse under his breath. Trevor mentioned Jared's rumored to be dealing again, maybe GHB, maybe Ecstasy. If Roxanne is mixed up in that... He trailed off, the implication clear. Aurora paced near the fireplace, arms crossed. "You don't think she's distributing, do you? I mean, that's insane. She's my best friend." Wyatt ran a hand through his hair. "I don't want to jump to conclusions, but you saw them talking. You've been coming home disoriented. Someone's obviously playing dirty with you, Aurora." A tense silence stretched between them. Finally, Aurora whispered, "I'm scared." Admitting that out loud felt like swallowing glass. Wyatt pulled her into a hug, inhaling the faint lavender scent of her shampoo. "I know. Look, I'll start keeping a closer eye on this Jared character. Hell, if I have to, I'll talk to Trevor about it too." Just then, the phone buzzed on the side table, an incoming text from Felicia. Wyatt read it quickly and exhaled sharply. "She says Damian Fletcher's been spotted around Cannonballs again. Might be linking up with Jared." Aurora's face paled. The memory of Damian's threatening stance in her kitchen flashed through her mind. The fear, the adrenaline, it all rushed back. "This is spiraling." Wyatt nodded gravely. "We'll handle it. But we need to be careful. Clearly they want something, and it's connected to Roxanne, maybe even to you." She squeezed his hand, that old, comforting warmth in his touch momentarily soothing her. Yet the undercurrent of dread remained. Just as they were about to talk further, the distant rumble of thunder rolled across the sky, as though nature itself sensed the turmoil unfolding in their lives. Standing by the window, Aurora gazed at the darkening horizon. She recalled the spark in Roxanne's eyes whenever life got too boring. Her friend craved excitement the way a moth craves flame. But now Aurora realized that sometimes that flame could scorch everything in its path. She drew the curtains closed, her heart pounding. Tomorrow, she'd wake up and face another day of unknowns. For now, Wyatt's firm embrace was the only sanctuary she could cling to. Afternoon light cast long shadows across the Hastings farmhouse as Wyatt sped up the driveway, tires crunching over loose gravel. His heart thudded in his chest. Felicia had practically shouted into the phone, "Wyatt, something's happening at your place! Hurry!" The front door stood open, curtains blowing in a frantic swirl. A dread he'd never known gripped him. He dashed up the porch steps and froze at the threshold. Inside, he heard a low voice menacing, unsteady. Stepping forward, he saw Damian Fletcher, shotgun in hand, looming over Aurora in the living room. Her hair was disheveled, cheeks streaked with tears. Roxanne stood near the fireplace, face flushed with panic. She looked like she'd been grabbed or shoved, her blouse off one shoulder. Wyatt gripped his Glock, lifting it level. "Get away from her!" Damian spun around, eyes alive with fury. His shotgun jerked dangerously. "About time you showed up, Hastings," he hissed. "We've got unfinished business." Wyatt's voice shook. "Damian, let her go." Aurora gasped, trying to edge closer to Wyatt. Roxanne, trembling, glanced at Damian, then at Wyatt, as though mentally calculating how to intervene. Damian let out a harsh laugh. "Too late for negotiations." His gaze flicked to Roxanne. "Didn't I tell you not to call him?" Roxanne's voice cracked. "Two didn't call. He must have found out." Wyatt inched forward, the Glock steady in his grip. Time felt stretched, adrenaline pounding in his veins. "Damian, no one needs to get hurt." But something in Damian's posture said otherwise. He pivoted the barrel of his shotgun a single horrifying second and yanked the trigger. Wyatt felt a massive jolt across his torso like he'd been tackled by a wrecking ball. The impact spun him backward. The Glock slipped from his hand, clattering across the hardwood floor. Then he slammed onto his back, pain roaring through his body. He heard Aurora scream, the sound cutting through the ringing in his ears. Damian's shotgun barked with deadly echo. Darkness pulsed at the edges of Wyatt's vision. Blood pooled under his shoulder, chest burning like fire. He tried to move, but his limbs wouldn't cooperate. The world blurred, swirling with shouts and frantic movement. Then, a second gunshot, sharper, popped. Wyatt caught a glimpse of Roxanne crouched behind an overturned chair, arms extended, a small pistol in her hand. Damian staggered, his own weapon dropping with a clang. He fell to the floor with a heavy thud. For a tense moment, no one breathed. Aurora rushed to Wyatt's side, tears streaming. He could taste blood in the back of his throat, each shallow breath agony. "Wyatt!" she cried, pressing her palm over his chest wound. "Oh God, please hold on!" Roxanne, pale as a ghost, stared at Damian's unmoving form. Her pistol trembled in her grip. She sucked in a shaky breath, then tossed it aside and scrambled to Aurora's side. "We have to call 911, she gasped, voice hoarse. Aurora nodded, fumbling for her phone. Wyatt tried to speak, but only managed a soft groan, mind teetering on the brink. He heard Aurora's frantic words, something about an ambulance, gunshots, hurry. Then a wave of dizziness overtook him. The light in the room seemed to dim, an invisible curtain descending. He felt Aurora's warm hand on his cheek, Roxanne's voice somewhere above him, everything turning muffled like he was underwater. Before the darkness claimed him, Wyatt registered one last thought. Damian pulled the trigger first, but Roxanne saved my life. The farmhouse transformed into a storm of flashing lights and urgent voices within minutes. Redan blue beams danced across the old walls as paramedics carried Wyatt onto a gurney, pressing gauze over the bleeding wound. Aurora hovered, panic etched on every feature. "Please, save him," she choked out, clutching the sleeve of a paramedic's uniform. He gave a tight nod. "We'll do everything we can, ma'am. He's got a serious chest injury, but he's still breathing." At the far end of the living room, Damian Fletcher's body lay under a hastily draped sheet. Two police officers, uniforms crisp in the swirling chaos, gently led Roxanne aside to take her statement. Roxanne's hands shook uncontrollably as she tried to explain what happened. I grabbed his pistol after Wyatt was shot," she stammered, voice thick with tears. "I didn't have a choice." The taller officer, Lieutenant Parks, gave her a somber glance. "Ma'am, you're saying it was self-defense?" Roxanne nodded, swallowing hard. "He would have killed all of us." Aurora hovered between them, eyes darting from Wyatt's limp form to Roxanne's distressed state. She wanted to be at Wyatt's side, but couldn't bear to leave Roxanne alone in front of the police. Even though Roxanne had just saved Wyatt, the entire scenario felt unreal, like they were starring in a twisted nightmare. A female paramedic nudged Aurora gently. "Ma'am, do you want to ride with him to the hospital?" Aurora didn't hesitate. She threw a tearful glance at Roxanne, who offered a faint nod as if to say, "Go." Within minutes, Aurora found herself in the back of the ambulance, clutching Wyatt's hand. His face was pallid, eyes shut. The paramedics worked swiftly, hooking him up to IV lines and an oxygen mask. The siren wailed, a high-pitched testament to the urgency. "Stay with me, Wyatt," Aurora whispered, voice cracking. "I can't lose you." He didn't stir, but his chest rose and fell in shallow breaths. Even that small sign offered a thread of hope. Meanwhile, at the farmhouse, Roxanne sat on the bottom step of the porch, talking haltingly with Lieutenant Parks and another officer, DeSoto. She recounted how Damien forced his way into the house, how he'd threatened Aurora, and how Wyatt arrived. "I swear," Roxanne said, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "Damien had the shotgun pointed right at Wyatt. He fired, and Wyatt went down. I just reacted." Parks studied her, expression neither comforting nor accusatory. "Where did you get that pistol?" Roxanne exhaled shakily. "I found it behind the living room chair. It wasn't mine. I have no idea how it got there." In truth, Roxanne suspected Wyatt kept a spare gun for emergencies, but she didn't want to speak for him without proof. The officer scribbled notes, then offered a curt nod. "For now, we'll treat this as justifiable self-defense. But we'll need more information. Don't leave town." Roxanne shook her head. "I'm not going anywhere." They let her go inside to gather herself. With paramedics gone, the house felt eerily silent, aside from the low murmurs of police finishing their work. She noticed the overturned furniture, the deep crimson stains on the floor. It hit her like a freight train. She'd shot a man, killed him, and Wyatt might still be dying. Trembling, she sank onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. She wasn't sure who to call, but decided to dial Trevor's number. He answered on the second ring, voice breathless. "Roxanne, I just heard the sirens. What the hell happened?" She struggled to find the words. "Damien, he showed up. Wyatt's, he got shot. They took him to the hospital. Damien's dead." A stunned pause. "Stay put," Trevor finally said. "Felicia and I will be right there." Roxanne ended the call, tears blurring her vision. She could still smell the faint hint of gunpowder in the air. Her mind replayed the moment she pulled the trigger. It felt both instantaneous and agonizingly slow. Outside, the last officer rolled up crime scene tape around the porch, the flickering lights of a police cruiser illuminating the quiet evening. Roxanne pressed a hand to her chest, half expecting her heart to break through her ribs. For Aurora and Wyatt, the journey was just beginning. For Roxanne, a crushing guilt settled. She had helped set these dark wheels in motion, and only time would tell if Wyatt survived her attempt to set things right. The fluorescent lights of Charlottesville General Hospital hummed softly, reflecting off the glossy floors. Aurora paced outside the ICU, arms wrapped tight around herself. A clock on the wall ticked endlessly, every second a fresh stab of anxiety. Trevor McKenna arrived first, practically skidding down the hallway. His broad shoulders looked tense, and Felicia was right behind him, eyes wide with concern. "Any news?" Trevor asked, voice low. Aurora pressed her lips together. "They rushed him into surgery for the shotgun injuries. The doctor said it was birdshot. Thank God it wasn't buckshot or slugs. Still, he lost a lot of blood." Felicia laid a comforting hand on Aurora's arm. "He's a fighter, Aurora. We just have to believe." Roxanne appeared a few minutes later, her expression a mix of exhaustion and remorse. She approached cautiously, as if unsure of her welcome. Aurora met her eyes, emotions swirling gratitude for saving Wyatt, anger at the chain of events, heartbreak that it ever came to this. "Aurora," Roxanne said softly, voice trembling. "I'm so sorry." Aurora stared at her, tears threatening again. "Roxy, I don't even know what to say." She hesitated, then let out a shaky breath. "You saved his life. But it all started because of—" Roxanne's eyes filled with tears. "I know. Damien threatened me. He forced me to involve you in his deals. I swear I never wanted it to go this far." Trevor cleared his throat, stepping in. "Let's not do this here, ladies. Wyatt's in surgery. We'll talk later." Reluctantly, both women nodded. They found stiff plastic chairs in the waiting area. Minutes blurred into hours. A nurse eventually emerged with a neutral expression, telling them Wyatt was in recovery, condition critical but stable. Aurora nearly sobbed with relief. Only immediate family could see him, so Aurora went in. The ICU room smelled of antiseptic and faint bleach. Machines beeped in steady rhythm. Wyatt lay pale against white sheets, tubes and wires snaking around him. She brushed a hand over his forehead, tears slipping onto the pillow. "Wyatt," she whispered, "I'm here." He didn't stir, lost in a medically induced quiet. Still, seeing the slight rise and fall of his chest gave Aurora hope. Later that evening, Roxanne found Aurora sitting near a vending machine in the hallway. The hospital's fluorescent glow made them both look washed out, as if ghosts of themselves. "I talked to the police," Roxanne said, voice subdued. "They're not charging me with anything right now. They said it looks like self-defense." Aurora exhaled slowly. "That's good, I guess." Roxanne's gaze darted to the floor. "Good isn't exactly how I feel. I killed someone, Aurora. And all of it, Jared, Damien, it's tangled in your life and Wyatt's. I can't forgive myself." Aurora studied her friend, old memories flickering. High school giggles, shared secrets about crushes, late-night study sessions. It felt like a different lifetime. "What was Damien holding over you?" she finally asked. "I need to understand." Roxanne swallowed hard. "He threatened to expose me if I didn't help him move Ecstasy and GHB around. I owed him money. Jared was in on it. I thought I could keep you safe, just bring you to Cannonballs as a decoy. But then Damien got fixated on you. I'm so sorry, Aurora." Aurora rubbed her temples, a dull headache forming. "So you let me walk into danger without warning me?" Roxanne's voice cracked. "I was naive, stupid even. By the time I realized how serious Damien was, it was too late." A heavy silence fell. Finally, Aurora said, "Wyatt might never forgive you." "I know," Roxanne murmured, tears brimming again. "I don't blame him." Felicia approached, wearing a worried frown. "We should all try to get some rest. The nurses said they'll keep us updated on Wyatt." Trevor gently guided them back to the waiting area, where they settled for a long, restless night. Every beep of a heart monitor or distant page over the loudspeaker made Aurora's heart jump. As dawn broke, a warm pink light spread through the windows, contrasting with the hospital's sterile interior. Roxanne sat in a corner chair, eyes half closed. Trevor and Felicia dozed on a small couch. Aurora remained at Wyatt's bedside, holding his hand, praying for a miracle. In those hushed hours, she thought about the times Wyatt kissed her under the orchard trees, how secure she felt on the old farmhouse porch, his unwavering love. Now that sense of safety was shattered. She gazed at him, bandaged, bruised, and realized her life had pivoted on a single shotgun blast. Wyatt's eyelids fluttered but didn't open. She leaned closer, voice quivering. "Come back to me, Wyatt. Please." No answer came except the steady drip of an IV. But Aurora clung to that gentle rhythm like a lifeline, hoping Wyatt had enough fight in him to return. Mid-morning found Aurora half asleep by Wyatt's bedside, her head pillowed on the edge of the mattress. A nurse entered, checking vitals, then quietly left. The beep-beep of the heart monitor was oddly soothing now. Suddenly, Wyatt stirred. A soft groan escaped his lips. Aurora jolted awake, nearly knocking over a plastic water cup. "Wyatt?" she whispered, heart leaping. He blinked, eyes out of focus, then winced in pain. His hand twitched against hers, fingers weakly curling. The oxygen mask muffled his voice. A wave of relief swept Aurora, tears spilling down her cheeks. She pressed the call button to alert the nurses. "It's okay," she murmured, brushing his hair back from his forehead. "You're safe. You're in the hospital." His gaze darted around the room, confusion etched on his features. Finally, he rasped, "Damien." Aurora's throat tightened. He's gone. You were shot, but the doctor said you're going to recover." Wyatt closed his eyes, a flicker of relief and tension crossing his brow. The nurse bustled in, checking the IV lines and adjusting monitors. She smiled at Aurora. "He seems stable, but he needs rest. The doctor will be by soon." As soon as the nurse left, Wyatt tried to speak again, voice raw. "Aurora, Roxanne, she—" Aurora squeezed his hand. "She saved your life, Wyatt. She shot Damien." He looked stunned, struggling to piece everything together. "I remember the shotgun blast," he murmured. I fell." A swirl of memory flickered behind his eyes. but then he frowned. I can't recall the details before that. It's all hazy, like I'm missing something. Aurora's chest tightened. The doctor had warned them Wyatt might experience partial memory gaps due to shock and blood loss. She took a careful breath. You'll remember in time. For now, just focus on healing. He closed his eyes again, exhaustion evident. How long have I been out? She glanced at the clock on the wall. 3 days, give or take. They kept you sedated to stabilize you. He let that sink in, then attempted a small nod. Is she okay? Aurora's mouth felt dry. She's physically fine. The police questioned her, but it's looking like self-defense. She's been distraught. Wyatt's jaw twitched as if a fragment of anger sparked, then softened. I owe her, I guess. In the hallway, they heard voices. Trevor, Felicia, and Roxanne had arrived. A doctor in a white coat was checking a chart. Aurora waved them over. Trevor gave Wyatt a broad grin of relief. You tough son of a gun. Felicia's eyes misted. We're so glad you're awake. Roxanne hung back, arms folded, guilt evident. Wyatt's gaze flicked to her. For a tense moment, neither spoke. Then Wyatt managed a half nod. Thanks, Roxy, he said quietly, swallowing hard. I heard you saved me. She let out a breath she seemed to have been holding all week. Yeah, her voice cracked. I'm sorry for everything else. Wyatt closed his eyes, clearly fatigued, so Trevor motioned for them to leave. Roxanne hesitated, as though wanting to say more, then shuffled out with Felicia. Aurora stayed behind, perched on the edge of the bed. When the room was quiet, Wyatt squeezed her hand gently. There's a lot I don't remember, Aurora, but I know I need answers. She nodded, tears gathering again. We'll get them. Right now, rest. He exhaled, letting the pain, medication, and relief roll over him. It still hurts like hell, he murmured, wincing, but I'm alive. His words felt like a victory chant in a war not yet won. Aurora leaned in, brushed a soft kiss on his forehead. We'll figure out the rest, she whispered. Later. That afternoon, a physical therapist came to check Wyatt's mobility, gently testing his arm and shoulder. The birdshot injuries would require care, but it seemed no vital organs were destroyed. The doctor gave a measured smile. You're lucky, Mr. Hastings. A few inches either way, and it might have been a different story. Wyatt forced a weak grin. Guess I owe this tough hide to my granddad's genes. As the day wore on, he dozed intermittently, memories flickering in and out. Aurora stayed close, her mind a swirl of conflicting emotions. She recalled Roxanne's confession about Damien's threats, Jared's involvement. None of it felt fully resolved, but at least Wyatt had come back to her. From the window, Aurora could see the hospital courtyard, bright with summer sunshine. People moved about down there, living their lives. She placed a hand over Wyatt's, silently promising that once he was stable, they'd confront the truth, no matter how hard it might be. Wyatt Hastings eased open the front door of his farmhouse, his shoulder sending jolts of pain through his torso. A thick bandage still wrapped his chest where Damien's birdshot had torn into him. The doctors recommended he rest for another week, but Wyatt felt compelled to come home. Something about this place, old wooden floors, the scent of pine polish both comforted and haunted him. Aurora hovered near the foyer, concern etched on her face. Please take it slow, she said, gently pressing a hand to his uninjured side. You practically fled the hospital. Wyatt exhaled, stepping over the threshold. I can't stand lying in bed any longer. Besides, he paused, scanning the living room where the shooting took place. The bullet holes and bloodstains had been cleaned up, but the memories lingered like ghosts. I need to see it myself. Maybe it'll help jog my memory. Aurora's gaze flickered with sympathy. She knew he recalled Damien aiming the shotgun, the chaotic flash of muzzle fire, and then waking in the hospital, but not much else. Okay, she murmured. Just don't overexert yourself. Over the next hour, Wyatt moved carefully through the house, noticing scuffed walls, a chipped windowsill. Flashbacks came in uneven bursts like snapshots that refused to align. He saw Roxanne standing by the fireplace, felt the dreaded panic of that moment, but details remained foggy. A tap sounded at the door. Trevor McKenna poked his head in, wearing his usual worn leather jacket. "Heard you were back," he said. "Felicia and I wanted to check on you." Wyatt mustered a half-smile, wincing. "Good to see you, Trev. Come on in." Trevor carried a small white box. Felicia baked cookies. Figure sugar might help with the healing. They gathered in the kitchen, steam rising from fresh coffee Aurora brewed. Wyatt's grip trembled slightly on his mug, though he hid it behind a sip. Silence hovered until Trevor cleared his throat. "Listen," Trevor said. "The cops took final statements. Damien's been confirmed dead. No charges against Roxanne's self-defense, but Jared Beckett's name keeps popping up." Wyatt set down the mug. "Jared, the mechanic, right? Tied up with Damien somehow?" Trevor nodded gravely. "Word is, Jared's been bragging he owns a piece of business left behind. Drugs, maybe. He's been spotted in town, real cagey." A flicker of memory darted through Wyatt's mind, Jared lurking at cannonballs, or maybe near Mousetrap. But the recollection dissolved as quickly as it came. His chest tensed with frustration at these mental gaps. Aurora gently touched Wyatt's forearm. "Don't push yourself too hard. You'll remember in time." He inhaled, a pang echoing from his wound. "I'm trying. Each time I recall something, it's like a puzzle piece without the corners." After Trevor left, Aurora helped Wyatt upstairs so he could rest. In their bedroom, sunlight streamed through lace curtains, highlighting old photographs on the dresser pictures of them smiling, carefree, back when life felt simpler. Wyatt slipped into a chair by the window, gazing outside. The orchard looked peaceful. Orchard trees swaying in the breeze, belying the turmoil he felt. His eyes drifted to a small table near the closet. A worn leather jacket rested there, Damien's jacket. The one police had apparently left behind after concluding their investigation. Wyatt's pulse quickened, a strange certainty gripping him. "Aurora," he called, voice low but urgent. She came into the room, eyebrows raised. "Yeah?" He pointed at the jacket. "Why is that still here? Didn't the police bag it as evidence?" Aurora's expression grew uneasy. "They said it wasn't relevant anymore. Roxanne told them Damien tossed it aside before the shooting. The cops figured it was worthless. I offered to discard it, but I haven't gotten around to it yet." Wyatt stood, ignoring the protest from his ribs. He crossed the room and lifted the jacket, rummaging through the pockets. His fingers brushed against something small and hard. Carefully, he pulled out a tiny plastic bag with a few colorful pills. Aurora's eyes widened. "What?" Wyatt's jaw clenched. "Looks like ecstasy. Damien must have been carrying. Who knows what else he was into?" For a moment, a swirl of anger and confusion welled up. The man had nearly taken Wyatt's life, and now, from beyond the grave, was still weaving trouble into their home. He glanced at Aurora's pale face. "We need to figure out what else he left behind. And if Jared's sniffing around, we need answers." She nodded, fear mingling with resolve in her eyes. "Then let's find them together." Early morning light spilled through the farmhouse windows, painting the living room in a golden hue. Wyatt, stiff and sore, sank onto the sofa. Across from him, Roxanne Carter perched on the edge of an armchair, hands folded in her lap. The tension in the air was palpable, like a drawn bowstring. Aurora stood nearby, arms crossed protectively. She'd invited Roxanne over, hoping this conversation might shed light on how Damien and Jared had ensnared their lives. Yet Wyatt's resentment simmered just below the surface. Roxanne was partly responsible for Aurora's spiral into late-night parties and memory lapses. "Thank you for coming," Aurora began softly. Roxanne nodded, voice taut. "I owe Wyatt the truth no matter how ugly." Wyatt took a breath, ignoring the ache in his chest. "Just start from the beginning." Roxanne's gaze dropped to her clasped fingers. "A few months ago, I got tangled up with Damien. He was dealing ecstasy and GHB, but I tried to keep my distance at first. Then I ran into financial trouble, some debts I couldn't cover. Damien offered me a job, push his product, lure new buyers. I refused at first." She swallowed hard. "But when Jared got involved, they threatened me. They said if I didn't comply, they'd spread rumors or worse. I panicked." Aurora's face pinched with hurt. "You never told me. We're best friends." Roxanne lifted tearful eyes. I was ashamed. Then Damien insisted I bring you along to Cannonballs. He claimed you'd draw attention, maybe interest from bigger spenders. Her voice trembled. I should have warned you, but I was scared. Damien said he had a video of me, he'd show it to everyone if I didn't cooperate. Wyatt stiffened, recalling glimpses of Aurora stumbling home, Roxanne by her side, both tight-lipped and evasive. So you put Aurora in danger to protect yourself, he said, bitterness creeping into his tone. Roxanne flinched. I didn't realize how far Damien would take it. I thought it was just parties, quick deals in back rooms. Then he fixated on Aurora. He wanted her to try his product, become part of the scene. She exhaled shakily. He threatened me again. If I tried to stop him, he'd target Aurora anyway. A heavy silence settled. Aurora's eyes brimmed with betrayal, her knuckles white around the back of a chair. Wyatt wanted to lash out, but one look at Roxanne's haunted expression told him she was more victim than villain. Still, he thought, it doesn't erase the fact that she risked Aurora's safety. Roxanne wiped her cheeks. Damien also roped Jared into this. Jared's always been a shady mechanic, but now he's selling too. He insisted I owed them money. She glanced at Wyatt. When Damien found out Aurora was married to you, a land surveyor with a big farm, I think he saw potential for something bigger. Wyatt grit his teeth. So that's why he ended up here shotgunning me. Roxanne nodded, tears shining. I swear, Wyatt, I never meant for it to go so far. But once you got shot, I had to do something. Aurora's voice came soft, yet laced with sorrow. You saved his life, Roxy. I'm grateful for that. But the fallout is huge. Jared's still lurking around Charlottesville, and we don't know how deep the drug ring goes. Roxanne bowed her head. I'll do anything to fix this. I'll talk to the police, or I'll help you find Jared, whatever it takes. Wyatt stared at the living room floor, mind swirling. He pictured the plastic bag of ecstasy he found in Damien's jacket. How many secrets still festered in the corners of their home? First step, he said quietly, is figuring out if Damien stashed more drugs around the farm. Then we worry about Jared. Roxanne nodded earnestly, relief flickering in her eyes that Wyatt wasn't ordering her out. Aurora stepped closer, pressing a trembling hand to Roxanne's. A fragile sense of unity formed between them despite the anger, despite the wounds. Let's do it together, Aurora whispered. We'll search the property, piece by piece. No more secrets. Wyatt's chest throbbed, but he mustered a faint smile. We face this head-on. His gaze landed on Roxanne. But if Jared shows, we'll need to be ready. Roxanne swallowed. I'll give you everything I know, contacts, phone numbers, addresses. Jared's not going to stop unless we stop him first. Outside, a gust of wind rustled the porch swing, the sound echoing through the open window. Inside the old farmhouse, truths were finally surfacing, forging a tense alliance that might be their only shot at ending Jared's looming threat. 2 days after Roxanne's confession, Wyatt carefully stepped off the porch into the crisp morning air, favoring his injured side. Aurora followed close behind, wearing a jean jacket against the autumn chill. A swirl of orange leaves drifted across the front yard, hinting that summer's warmth was gone, just like their former sense of security. Roxanne's inside, combing through old papers, Aurora explained, shivering. She's trying to track any mention of Jared's last known address. Wyatt nodded. Despite the tense alliance, he appreciated Roxanne's efforts. Meanwhile, I want to check the barn. If Damien ever stored something here, that'd be a logical place. They moved slowly across the pasture, the grass damp with morning dew. Wyatt's dog, a wiry mutt named Cooper, trotted behind them, occasionally sniffing the air. The barn loomed ahead, weathered red boards and a slanted roof. Inside, dust motes danced in shafts of light from cracked slats. Wyatt flipped on a weak overhead bulb. Stacks of old crates and farm equipment lined the walls. He and Aurora split up, rummaging carefully through corners, mindful not to strain Wyatt's injuries. After an hour of searching, they found no hidden stash. Aurora exhaled, hands on her hips. Maybe we're barking up the wrong tree. Wyatt shrugged, wincing at a dull ache in his chest. We'll keep looking. Damien was cunning, but who knows if he had time to store more contraband here. Aurora bit her lip. If Jared thinks it's here, he might come looking. Just then, The barn's wide doors groaned open. A tall figure stood silhouetted in the sunlight. Wyatt's pulse spiked, hand instinctively going for his sidearm, though he only carried a .38 snub-nose these days, courtesy of Trevor's cautious loan. As the figure stepped in, Wyatt recognized Jared Beckett, lanky build, mechanic's jacket unzipped, a sly grin curling his lips. "Well, look at that," Jared drawled. "I heard the man of the house was back from the dead." He raised a brow at Aurora. "And the lovely Mrs. Hastings, always in the thick of it." Aurora's face paled. "How did you get on our property?" Jared shrugged. "Easy to slip past your little front gate." He glanced around the barn. "Heard rumors Damien might have stashed some goodies around. Figured I'd come see if y'all stumbled on it." Wyatt stepped forward, ignoring the screaming protest in his wound. "Stay the hell away from my farm, Beckett. We have nothing for you." Jared smirked, taking a slow step closer. "Now, Wyatt, you wouldn't want to threaten me. I hear you're still healing, wouldn't want that bandage to, oh, come undone." A flicker of real fear glinted in Aurora's eyes, but she squared her shoulders. "We're done with you and Damien's twisted business. Leave." Jared's grin hardened. "Damien's out of the picture, so that leaves me. And I'm not leaving empty-handed. Either cough up the stash, or I make your lives miserable." Wyatt clenched his fists. "There is no stash," he snapped. "Damien's jacket had a small bag, barely anything. The cops probably seized the rest." Jared let out a humorless chuckle. "You sure about that? A big farm like this, so many cozy hiding spots. Let's just say if I find out you're lying, you'll regret it." Before Wyatt could retort, the barn door slammed again. Roxanne stood there, chest heaving, her eyes blazing. "Get out, Jared," she spat. "There's nothing for you. Damien's gone. So is your so-called deal." Jared locked eyes with her. "You owe me, Carter. Don't forget it." She shook her head, voice trembling. "I don't owe you a damn thing." Jared's hand flexed near his waistband as if considering pulling a weapon. Tension crackled in the stale barn air. Then, with a contemptuous sniff, he spun on his heel and stalked out, letting the doors bang behind him. Aurora let out a breath she'd been holding. Roxanne rushed over, face drawn. Wyatt stared after Jared, adrenaline racing. "We're on his radar now," he muttered, gripping Aurora's hand. "This is going to escalate." Roxanne frowned, voice shaky. "We need to warn Trevor and Felicia and maybe talk to the police. Jared won't stop until he's certain we don't have his precious stash." Wyatt exhaled, the pounding in his chest stirring up fresh pain. "Then we'd better find it before he does." Outside, a cold breeze rattled the barn doors. The golden morning light felt deceptive, as though mocking their predicament. Jared was out there, slithering through the fringes of their lives, and if they didn't act fast, he might tear what remained of Wyatt's family apart. That evening, the Hastings farmhouse lay draped in the soft glow of table lamps and the faint hum of the TV in the den. Wyatt rubbed a hand over his tired eyes, leaning back against the living room couch. His shoulder ached after the tense standoff with Jared, but fear churned deeper than physical discomfort. Aurora entered, balancing a tray with mugs of chamomile tea, her attempt at calming frayed nerves. "Any sign of Jared outside?" she asked quietly. Wyatt shook his head. "Cooper didn't bark. I double-checked the property boundaries at dusk. No footprints, no cars. Maybe he's biding his time." Roxanne paced near the bay window, arms crossed, peering through a gap in the curtains. "That's what scares me. Jared loves intimidation, so if he's quiet, something's brewing." A dull beep from Wyatt's phone interrupted them. He glanced at it, a text from Trevor. "Stopped by the bar. Jared hasn't shown here. Stay vigilant." Wyatt typed back a terse acknowledgement. As the tension in the room rose, Aurora forced a small smile. "Come on, let's not let him steal our peace. We'll figure this out." Wyatt nodded, setting his phone aside. "Roxanne, did you dig up anything else about Jared's stash or connections?" She bit her lip. "Nothing concrete, just a rumor he used cannonballs as a drop spot. But that was before Damien got greedy. Jared might have changed plans since then." Wyatt ran a hand through his hair, frustration tightening his chest. Every angle they pursued felt like a dead end. He gazed around the room, faintly recalling the chaos of that fateful night Damien, the shotgun, blood on the floor. The memory made his pulse spike. In an attempt to shift the mood, Aurora walked to the couch, intending to straighten the cushions. They'd been askew ever since Wyatt's hospital return. As she lifted one, her expression changed. What in the world? She reached in, tugging at something wedged deep in the seat crease. Wyatt stood, ignoring his shoulder's protest, and moved to help. When the fabric gave way, Aurora pulled out a lumpy plastic bag. Roxanne gasped at the sight of bright tablets, hundreds of them packed together, along with a couple small vials of clear liquid. "Oh my God," Aurora breathed. That's got to be Ecstasy, and GHB in those vials. Look at the labels." Roxanne's hand flew to her mouth. "Damien must have hidden it there. He must have stashed it in the couch the night he attacked, or even earlier. He might have planned to use your place as a storage spot." Wyatt felt anger and betrayal surge up like a tidal wave. "Damn it, our own living room, it's been turned into a drug stash." He snatched the bag off Aurora, holding it up to the light. The plastic shimmered with contraband. Aurora's voice trembled. "This is exactly what Jared thinks we have, isn't it? He's convinced we're holding some massive supply, and we just found it," Wyatt finished grimly. A wave of unease washed over him. If Jared knew they had it, or even suspected, he'd never back off. "We can't just hand it over to him. That's fueling more crime." Roxanne swallowed hard. "We should call the cops. Turn it in." Wyatt considered that. "Yes, that's the legal way. But Jared might retaliate if he catches wind. We need a plan." He shot Roxanne a meaningful look. "We tell Trevor, too. If Jared gets desperate, he might target the bar next." Aurora set the bag on the coffee table, her hands shaking. She'd never imagined something so illicit hidden within the furniture she curled up on each night. "I can't believe we lived with this right under us." Wyatt moved to her side, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "We'll figure out the next step, maybe an anonymous tip to the police, so Jared doesn't trace it back to us so easily." Roxanne spoke up, voice uneven. "That's a good idea, but you need to be careful. Jared might have people on the force he bribes for information. He's cunning." A long silence stretched as they all stared at the plastic bag on the table. The quiet ticking of the clock on the mantel felt deafening. Finally, Wyatt exhaled. "We'll do this right, by the book, but we have to be smart about it. Jared's not the type to just accept a loss." Outside, the wind picked up, rustling the shutters. Roxanne cast a nervous glance at the window. Aurora rubbed her arms as though trying to ward off a chill. Wyatt carefully lifted the stash, setting it in a locked drawer in the end table. It wasn't perfect, but he'd keep an eye on it until they decided how to proceed. His eyes met Aurora's, and in that shared gaze, they acknowledged how drastically their home had changed from a peaceful sanctuary to a place tainted by danger. The night pressed in, heavy with unspoken fears, and Wyatt couldn't help but feel the real storm had only begun. The late afternoon sun bathed the Hastings farmhouse in a warm glow, but the tension inside the living room felt anything but serene. Wyatt Hastings rested against the back of the couch, arms folded, keeping his injured shoulder still. Aurora stood nearby, her posture rigid with unease, while Roxanne Carter paced by the front window, peeking out at every passing car as though expecting Jared to appear any second. On the coffee table lay the plastic bag containing hundreds of ecstasy pills and a few vials of GHB, Damien's hidden stash. It gleamed like forbidden treasure under the lamplight. "We can't keep this here," Aurora said, voice barely above a whisper. "It's too dangerous." Wyatt nodded, eyes grim. "We also can't let Jared get it back. He's prowling around, convinced we have it. The moment he thinks we're vulnerable, he'll strike." Roxanne exhaled, raking her fingers through her hair. "Then we lure him in, make him think we're ready to deal." Aurora shot her friend an incredulous look. "Deal what? Sell drugs to that creep? Are you serious?" Roxanne's gaze flicked to Wyatt, then back to Aurora. "No, not actually sell, but let him think we might. It's the only way to put him off guard. If he believes there's a chance to reclaim his supply, he'll come out of hiding." Wyatt inhaled slowly, the idea churning in his mind. Roxanne's not wrong. If we can get Jared to meet on our terms, we can force him to expose himself and maybe get the cops to nab him or handle the situation ourselves. Handle the situation ourselves? Aurora repeated, worry lacing her voice. Before Wyatt could reply, a soft knock sounded at the door. Aurora jumped, but Wyatt signaled her to stay put. He strode over, ignoring the stiffness in his side. Through the glass, he recognized Trevor McKenna, his oldest friend, leaning in with a concerned expression. Trevor walked in, Felicia just behind him. They both took in the nervous faces and the stash on the table. Felicia's eyes went wide, but Trevor's lips thinned into a line of grim acceptance. So, Trevor said, tossing his keys onto the coffee table. I'm guessing Jared's the reason your nerves are shot, huh? Wyatt explained the plan to lure Jared out, letting him think they'd deal the stash. Felicia's brow furrowed. That's risky. He could come armed or bring backup. Wyatt rubbed the bandage under his shirt, wincing at the memory of Damien's shotgun. I know, but we've got to do something. We can't live under constant threat. Trevor nodded, gaze flicking to Roxanne. We can't trust the police to show up at the perfect moment. Jared might have connections on the force or slip away if he catches wind. But there's another way. Another way? Aurora asked, arms crossed protectively. Trevor hesitated, lowering his voice. I know a few biker types Harley riders who come by the mousetrap sometimes. They're not saints, but they hate scumbag dealers messing up the scene. If Jared tries anything, these guys could handle it, quietly. Aurora's expression fell between alarm and reluctant acceptance. You want to bring a biker gang into this? Roxanne grimaced but nodded slowly. Jared's no small-time thug. He'll come armed and he won't hesitate to hurt us. We need muscle on our side. Felicia placed a gentle hand on Aurora's arm. We'll keep it under control, hun. We don't want violence, but we can't just wait around for Jared to strike first. Wyatt released a slow breath. This was the turning point. So it's agreed Roxanne and I will set up the meet with Jared. Aurora, you'll pretend we're ready to cut a deal to get him off our backs. Trevor, you bring your biker contact as backup. Aurora cast an uneasy glance from Wyatt to Roxanne. I hate this, but fine. Let's do it. Anything to end this nightmare. Trevor nodded solemnly. I'll make a call. We'll pick a spot somewhere Jared won't suspect we're prepared. Outside, a breeze rustled the oak trees, their branches silhouetted against a honey-colored sky. It felt eerily calm, as though the world itself held its breath for the storm about to break. In the hush, Wyatt looked at Aurora, then Roxanne. They had come so far surviving Damien discovering the stash. Now they stood on the brink of a final confrontation with Jared Beckett. With a renewed sense of purpose, Wyatt gently picked up the plastic bag of contraband. If Jared wants this so bad, he muttered, let's give him a reason to show up. He set it back on the table with a soft thud, and Aurora placed a trembling hand over his. Their eyes met, a silent promise passing between them. There was no turning back now. They would face Jared in the shadows, armed with truth, desperation, and a little help from questionable allies. Midnight draped Charlottesville in a cloak of hazy neon and distant traffic hum. Aurora stood outside Cannonballs, hugging her denim jacket around her shoulders to ward off the chill. The bar's flickering sign buzzed overhead, painting her face in flashing reds and blues. Her phone screen glowed in her hand, Jared's number displayed, a single text message waiting to be sent. Wyatt leaned against the side of a nearby truck, scanning the dark parking lot. Beyond him, Trevor lingered with two biker acquaintances, Bear and Switchblade, men with gruff demeanors and loyalty to Trevor's word. Roxanne was inside Cannonballs, supposedly scoping the crowd. They all wore discreet earpieces that Trevor borrowed from a friend who worked private security, though Aurora hardly believed such gadgets belonged in her old life. You ready? Wyatt asked softly, glancing at Aurora. His bandaged shoulder twinged under his jacket, but he forced himself to stay steady. Aurora swallowed hard, nodding. Her heart thumped loudly in her chest. Let's do this! She tapped her phone, sending the text she'd prepared. Jared, I'm tired of running. I have the stash. Let's settle up. Meet me behind Cannonballs. Now. Minutes later, the reply buzzed in. Fine, I'll be there in 10. Wyatt exhaled, exchanging a tense look with Trevor. Bear rumbled in a low voice. We'll keep out of sight till he shows. Then we close in. Aurora tried to ignore the swirl of nerves in her stomach. This was the plan. She'd stand alone behind the bar near the dumpsters, the stash hidden in a small duffel. The moment Jared approached, Wyatt and the others would emerge. They hoped to corner him with enough intimidation that he'd either confess or at least back down. If not, the bikers would forcibly subdue him until the cops arrived. She slipped around to the back alley of Cannonballs, footsteps echoing on damp pavement. The alley smelled of stale beer and rotting trash. A single flickering bulb cast shadows along the red brick walls. She glanced at her phone. 12:11 a.m. Jared was late. A faint scrape of shoes alerted her. She spun, heart leaping. Jared Beckett stepped out of the darkness, that same smirk curling his lips. The overhead light revealed the glint of a handgun tucked into his waistband. "Aurora," he drawled, feigning civility. "So you finally grew a spine." She forced a tight smile. "I'm done being pushed around. You want the stash, right? Let's deal." Jared approached slowly, eyes flicking to the small duffel at Aurora's feet. "All of it?" She nodded. "Damien's entire supply. Then you leave us alone, Jared. No more threats." He chuckled, dark amusement dancing in his gaze. "We'll see." He inched closer, one hand drifting near his gun. "Where's your hubby?" Aurora's pulse hammered. "He's not here. Thought you'd be happier dealing with me." Jared looked around, suspicious. Hard to trust a Hastings. They have a knack for surprise. Behind the bar's corner, Wyatt crouched, watching through a crack in the alley fence. Trevor and the bikers stood on the opposite side, concealed. The earpiece crackled in Wyatt's ear, Roxanne's whisper. "He's right in front of her. One more step." Wyatt tensed, waiting for the signal. Jared's hand suddenly tightened on his weapon, as though he sensed the trap. Aurora's breath caught. The entire plan teetered on a razor's edge. "Show me the bag," Jared demanded. Aurora nudged the duffel with her foot, unzipping the top. The glow from the alley bulb illuminated plastic bags of multicolored pills. Jared's eyes lit with greedy satisfaction. "That's more like it." He reached down, fingers brushing the stash, then froze as footsteps thundered behind him. Wyatt stepped out, gun in hand but pointed downward. "That's enough, Jared." Trevor and Bear flanked him, switchblades circling from the opposite end of the alley to block Jared's escape. Jared's grin vanished, eyes darting in panic. "You set me up, you bitch!" he snarled at Aurora. She held her ground, though her knees felt weak. "You forced our hand! You threatened us!" Jared drew his gun halfway, but Bear lunged, grabbing his wrist in a vice-like grip. The weapon clattered onto the pavement. Jared fought back, hissing curses. Trevor joined in, locking Jared's arm behind him. Pain contorted Jared's features. Wyatt kept his aim steady. "Don't make it worse, Beckett." Jared glared, breath ragged. "Go to hell, Hastings. You think this is over?" Wyatt's jaw tightened. "No, but you won't be hurting my family anymore." Bear and Switchblade pressed Jared face down against the alley's cracked asphalt, twisting his arms so forcefully he yelped in pain. Wyatt stepped closer, chest tight with adrenaline. Aurora lingered at his side, clutching the duffel. Trevor kept watch, scanning the alley entrance for any sign of Jared's backup. The dim light caught the sheen of sweat on Jared's forehead. He spat out curses, voice muffled against the ground. "Get off me, you biker trash!" Bear snorted. "Last I checked, buddy, you're the one pinned to the dirt." Switchblade, a lean man with a shaved head, glared down at Jared. "Time for answers, scumbag." With a nod from Wyatt, the bikers eased up just enough for Jared to speak. Trevor stooped, gripping Jared's collar. "Start talking. Why'd you target Aurora?" "Why the threats?" Jared coughed, face twisted in fury. "Damien told me Aurora was an easy mark. She'd come around, buy drinks, maybe more. Roxanne brought her to Cannonballs." At that, Roxanne's voice crackled over Wyatt's earpiece. She was still inside the bar, but listening to every word. Wyatt clenched his fist, remembering how Roxanne had confessed her role. "You drugged Aurora, right?" he growled, stepping forward. A sneer crossed Jared's lips. "Only a little GHB Damien's idea. Keep her docile. Then we could rope her into distribution if we wanted. She was so naive." Aurora's hands shook around the duffel strap. The memory of scattered blackouts, waking up disoriented, blindsided by betrayal, it was all because of this man. "You ruined my life," she whispered, eyes burning. Jared let out a bitter laugh. "Roxanne did half the work. She owed us, you see, so we used that as leverage." Trevor shoved him slightly. "And you shot Wyatt." "That was Damien," Jared interjected. "I didn't pull the damn trigger." Wyatt's stomach churned at the mention of the shotgun blast, the searing memory. "But you sure as hell kept the threats going after Damien died. Then you set your sights on that stash." Jared twisted his neck to glare up at him. "Damn right, that stash is worth thousands, enough for me to expand, and I'm not about to let you keep it." Bear shifted his weight, pressing Jared back down. "Tough luck. We found it first." Wyatt signaled Bear to ease off again. The tension roiled. They weren't vigilantes, but they needed Jared's confession or at least a final submission. The plan was to subdue him until the police arrived. Trevor had quietly alerted a contact, but these bikers had their own brand of justice, and Wyatt feared it might go too far. Switchblade leaned in, voice cold. "Confess that you forced Aurora into your game, that you threatened Wyatt's life, that you drugged them. Confess, or I break your arm." Jared's face contorted with hatred. "You're all insane!" Bear twisted Jared's arm a fraction more, drawing a yelp of agony. Aurora winced at the sound, stepping back. She hated this violence, yet she remembered Jared's smug grin, how close they'd come to losing Wyatt. Part of her burned with grim satisfaction that Jared finally felt helpless. Wyatt could see the fury in Bear's eyes, the tension in Trevor's stance. This was the moment to act. He held up a hand. "Enough. We're not killing him." Trevor shot Wyatt a questioning look. "He deserves worse, Wyatt." "I know," Wyatt said quietly, "but we're not murderers. Let's do it right." Bear's massive shoulders rose in a shrug, then he released Jared's arm, though he kept a knee in Jared's back. Jared panted, glaring. "You think calling the cops will help? I'll find a way out." Wyatt lifted his phone, checking the time. The cavalry should be arriving soon. "Won't matter," he said, voice steadier than he felt. "We have your stash, and you just admitted to doping Aurora. That's enough to put you away." Jared's sneer faltered, replaced by something akin to fear. He struggled, but Bear pinned him harder. "You can't do this!" Switchblade narrowed his eyes. "Welcome to consequences, pal." The wail of sirens drew closer, echoing between the brick walls of the alley behind cannonballs. Aurora's heart pounded as she watched blue lights flicker across the damp pavement. Their plan had worked. Jared was pinned, the stash in Wyatt's hands, and now the police would handle the rest. At least, that was the hope. A police cruiser screeched to a halt at the alley entrance. Two officers jumped out, Officer Daniels and Officer Shin, badges glinting under the street lamp. They approached with caution, hands hovering near their holstered weapons. Trevor stepped forward, hands raised in a gesture of compliance. "It's okay, officers. We have the suspect subdued. He's armed, so be careful." Daniel's eyes flicked between Wyatt, the bikers, and Jared lying on the ground. "We got a call about a potential assault. Everyone stay calm." She nodded to Shin, who moved in to secure Jared. Bear and Switchblade stepped aside, letting the officers do their job. Jared, furious and disheveled, spat insults as Shin cuffed him. "This is a setup! They attacked me!" Aurora clenched the duffel strap, mustering her composure. "Officer Daniels, we have evidence he was trying to retrieve illegal drugs." She unzipped the bag, revealing the stash of Ecstasy and GHB. "He and a man named Damien Fletcher orchestrated a plan to use these. Jared threatened us repeatedly." Daniel's gaze hardened at the sight of the narcotics. "That's quite a haul. We'll need statements from all of you." Jared twisted in the cuffs, face twisted with malice. "You can't prove anything. It's your word against mine." Wyatt stepped forward, shoulders tense but voice controlled. "We have texts, plus a recorded confession tonight." He tapped a small recording device in his jacket pocket, Trevor's idea, hooking it up to the earpiece system. "You admitted to drugging Aurora and blackmailing Roxanne. That's enough to build a case." A flicker of real fear flashed in Jared's eyes. He glowered at them, then turned away, seething. Officer Shin patted Jared down, retrieving his handgun. Loaded and unregistered. That alone is trouble. Daniels knelt to gather the stash bag carefully. She jotted notes, lips pressed tight. We'll bag and tag this. One of you can come to the station to file a statement. The rest we may call in tomorrow. We'll also be searching Jared's vehicle for further contraband. Trevor, Bear, and Switchblade hung back, sharing a quiet, satisfied nod. Bear murmured to Switchblade, "Looks like we're done here, brother," then turned to Trevor. "We'll see you at the mousetrap sometime." Trevor thanked them, and they melted into the night, their unofficial role complete. Roxanne emerged from the bar just then, eyes wide at the row of police lights. She hurried over, face pale, as she saw Jared being led into the cruiser. The moment their gazes locked, Jared snarled, "You'll pay for this, Carter." But Roxanne merely stood firm, shoulders squared. "No, Jared, I'm done paying." The car door slammed shut, muffling Jared's curses. With that, Officer Daniels pivoted, nodding to the group. "We'll contact you all for follow-up. From what I see, Mr. Beckett's facing multiple charges: possession, intent to distribute, illegal firearm, possible assault. Good work cooperating. Now go home. Get some rest." The sirens receded into the distance, and the alley fell into an almost eerie calm. Aurora felt her legs go weak with relief. She wanted to collapse into Wyatt's arms, but the knowledge of the biker's brand of intimidation still lingered. She wasn't proud of the violence that had transpired, yet part of her felt an undeniable sense of closure. Wyatt slipped his arm gently around her waist. "It's over." She leaned against him, tears pricking at the corners of her eyes. "I hope so." Roxanne came closer, voice trembling. "I thank you, all of you. If Jared were free, I'd never feel safe." She swallowed hard. "I'm going to do what I should have done months ago: find help, maybe even check into a rehab program, get away from this madness for good." Trevor patted her shoulder. "You do that, and you let us know if you need anything else." A light breeze rustled the pile of leaves near the dumpsters, carrying away the last echoes of Jared's anger. The group stood in a loose circle, the flickering neon sign of cannonballs overhead. Once a place of misguided thrill, it now stood as the backdrop for their final stand. Wyatt gave Aurora a faint smile. "Let's go home." She nodded, slipping her hand into his. Roxanne followed a few paces behind, as though uncertain of her welcome. But Aurora paused, turning back to offer a small, grateful smile. Roxanne's eyes shimmered with tears, relief and guilt all mingled. Together they stepped into the cool Virginia night, ready to leave behind the swirling chaos of drugs, threats, and near-fatal encounters. With Jared in custody, the immediate danger had passed, though the scars remained. What they needed now was time to heal, time to rebuild the trust shaken by betrayal, and time to chart a new beginning free from shadows. A crisp autumn breeze fluttered across the front porch of the Hastings farmhouse, carrying the faint scent of apples from the nearby orchard. Wyatt Hastings stood at the porch railing, gazing down the winding dirt road that led away from their land. The evening sky stretched overhead in soft shades of gold and pink, a stark contrast to the turmoil in his mind. He heard the door creak behind him. Aurora stepped outside, carefully shutting it against the chill. She drew her lightweight sweater tight, crossing the porch to join Wyatt. For a moment, neither spoke. The hush was fragile, like the calm after a storm that had wreaked havoc on both their lives. Finally, Aurora drew a slow breath. "We should talk." Her voice was gentle yet insistent. Wyatt nodded. He turned so that he could meet her gaze, noticing how her shoulders trembled slightly. "Yeah," he said, voice low. "We've put this off long enough." They settled on the porch swing, the chain squeaking softly as they rocked. 1,000 words and emotions built up in the silence. Aurora clenched her hands on her lap, summoning the courage to speak. I have something to tell you," she began. Her eyes flickered with both guilt and longing. "When this all started with Roxanne and cannonballs, I can't lie that it felt exciting. I'd been lonely. You were gone a lot, Wyatt, and I thought maybe I just needed a spark." Wyatt's jaw tensed, an ache throbbing near his old gunshot wound. He remembered how many times he'd left Aurora behind, trusting she was safe while he tackled survey jobs. "Go on," he managed. She swallowed hard. Roxanne made it sound harmless, just a night out. But part of me liked that feeling of being free, of escaping. "I never slept with anyone else, Wyatt. Never." Her voice trembled. "I need you to believe that." He closed his eyes, recalling the torment he'd felt seeing Aurora come home disoriented, skirt askew. A slow exhale escaped him. "Deep down, I do believe you, but it hurt to think you might have wanted more than me." Aurora's eyes filled with tears. "I never wanted more than you. I was just bored, maybe. Curious. And that's when Damien and Jared latched on. Roxanne was in so deep. I didn't realize I was walking into a trap until it was too late." Wyatt reached out, brushing a tear from her cheek. "I'm sorry I wasn't around," he murmured. "I got so wrapped up in providing for us that I lost sight of what you needed, what we both needed." A hush settled again, broken only by the distant caw of crows flying overhead. Aurora sniffed, offering a shaky smile. Roxanne tried to apologize, too. "She told me everything about how Damien blackmailed her, how Jared forced her to drag me into their mess. I'm angry, but she saved your life." Her eyes glistened. "And for that, I owe her a chance." Wyatt's gaze hardened momentarily at the mention of Roxanne. Then he softened. "She did. Without her, I'd be dead. Doesn't erase the damage, but I can't ignore what she did to protect me in the end." Aurora slipped her hand into his. "We've come so close to losing everything. Let's promise not to hide our fears anymore." Wyatt squeezed her fingers. Agreed. A weight lifted in his chest, the confession and honesty forging a slender path toward reconciliation. They remained there for a few minutes more, the porch swing swaying gently. By the time the sun set, streaks of purple and red wove across the horizon, and the two of them felt, for the first time in months, that they were on the same side of the battle. Aurora cleared her throat, offering the faintest smile. "Come inside, okay? It's getting cold." Wyatt stood, lingering just a moment to glance at the orchard. Then he followed her through the threshold, into the farmhouse that held both painful memories and the promise of a new beginning. A few days later, the late morning sun poured through the farmhouse windows, illuminating Roxanne Carter standing awkwardly in the living room. She clutched a small paper bag in one hand, a gift of some sort, and shifted her weight from foot to foot. Aurora beckoned her inside gently. "Thank you for coming," Aurora said, offering a measured smile. She gestured for Roxanne to sit. Roxanne's gaze flicked around the room, still haunted by memories of the night Wyatt was shot here. I wanted to see how you two are healing." Aurora sat across from her, folding her hands. "We're doing better. Every day gets a little easier, but it's still tough." They both hesitated, words caught in the tension that had once been a warm friendship. Roxanne's eyes welled with tears. "I'm so sorry, Aurora. About everything. I put you in danger. I dragged you into cannonballs, all for my own selfish reasons, debts. The rush of it all. I can never erase that." Aurora swallowed hard, recalling how close she'd come to losing Wyatt and her own sanity. "You were manipulated by Damien and Jared, but you also made choices." Her voice tightened. "Still, I know you never wanted Wyatt hurt, and you saved him." A tear slipped down Roxanne's cheek. "I couldn't live with myself if he died. I only pulled that trigger because I was desperate. Damien would have killed him." They sat in silence, each grappling with the swirl of guilt and gratitude. At last, Aurora's hand reached out, covering Roxanne's. "I forgive you. Not completely, at least not yet. But I'm willing to try to rebuild this, piece by piece." Roxanne's relief was palpable, her shoulders sagging. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'm getting help. I even talked to a rehab counselor, and I'm trying to stay away from that whole scene." Just then, Wyatt appeared in the doorway, leaning on the frame. He'd overheard part of the conversation. Roxanne stiffened, seeing him. The tension in her posture returned fear of his judgment, but Wyatt nodded a quiet greeting. "Hi, Roxanne," he said. His tone was guarded but without hostility. You doing all right?" She offered a timid nod. As all right as I can be. I wanted to apologize to you too, Wyatt. If you never forgive me, I understand. Wyatt stood there, arms crossed. A blend of emotions flickered across his features: anger, residual pain, a grudging sense of gratitude. You pulled that trigger and saved my life. That doesn't excuse everything, but it matters. He inhaled deeply. I won't pretend we're best friends overnight. But like Aurora said, maybe we can rebuild. A spark of hope lit Roxanne's face. Thank you. And She cleared her throat, setting the paper bag on the coffee table. I brought something. It's silly, but it's a small gesture. Aurora lifted the bag. Inside was a framed photo from years back. Aurora, Wyatt, and Roxanne smiling on the farmhouse porch during happier times. We took this the week after we got married, Aurora murmured, tears threatening her eyes. I'd almost forgotten. Roxanne managed a weak smile. I found it in a drawer at my place. Thought you might want it back as a reminder of who we were before all this mess. Wyatt's throat felt tight, gazing at the snapshot. So much had changed since then, innocence lost, trust fractured, yet the photo captured a flicker of hope. Thanks, he said quietly, sliding the frame back into the bag. We'll keep it somewhere safe. An awkward hush fell, broken only by the ticking of a grandfather clock in the hall. Finally, Aurora and Roxanne embraced a gentle, tentative hug. Roxanne whispered something neither Wyatt nor Aurora fully caught, but it sounded like a vow to try harder, be better. Stepping back, Roxanne brushed away fresh tears. I should get going. I appreciate this, both of you. I know it's not easy. Aurora nodded. Stay in touch, okay? Wyatt offered a small nod. Take care of yourself. Roxanne departed, leaving the living room quiet once more. Aurora set the photo frame on the mantel, and Wyatt joined her side. They exchanged a glance, one of shared relief, uncertainty, and the faint glimmer of reconciliation. Roxanne's presence still carried a shadow, but at least now a path of healing was forming. Early morning sun rays streamed through the upstairs windows of the farmhouse, painting the walls in soft gold. Wyatt stirred in bed, carefully stretching his healing shoulder. Though he still felt twinges of pain, his strength was returning day by day. He glanced over at the dresser where old family photos stood, memories of the Hastings legacy he now carried. Downstairs, Aurora was bustling in the kitchen, preparing breakfast, scrambled eggs from their own chickens and toast from fresh-baked bread. A light jacket draped over her shoulders, a sign that the fall weather was cooling. She smiled as she heard Wyatt's footsteps on the stairs. Morning, she greeted warmly, placing a plate before him at the farmhouse table. Felicia and Trevor had dropped by earlier with grocery supplies, ensuring Aurora and Wyatt could focus on recovery and rebuilding. Wyatt sat down, inhaling the comforting aroma of eggs and butter. Smells amazing. He took a bite, letting the flavors ground him in the present moment. I'm thinking about rehabbing the back orchard next spring. Maybe open it to visitors, pick your own apples or something. Aurora's eyes lit up. Really? That sounds wonderful. He nodded, a tentative smile forming. With Jared gone, I feel like we can finally move forward. We might even convert the old barn into a small event space: weddings, community gatherings. I've seen other farms do it, and we could make some extra income. Aurora reached across the table to squeeze his hand. I love that idea. I can help with marketing. You know, that's my specialty. She paused. Are you sure you're ready to handle the physical labor, though? Your shoulder? It'll be fine. Wyatt insisted, though warmth spread in his chest at her concern. The doctor said with therapy, I can be back to normal in a couple of months. Just then, the door creaked. Trevor poked his head in. Am I interrupting? Aurora grinned. Not at all. Join us for breakfast? Trevor stepped inside, glancing around the cozy kitchen. Felicia's outside, chatting with your dog, he joked. Then his expression turned more earnest. Wanted to let you know the guys from last time, the bikers, they're good. They're not sniffing around or anything. They said you owe them no favors. They were happy to see Jared behind bars. Wyatt exhaled, relief swirling through him. That's one less worry. Trevor plucked a slice of toast from the counter, leaning against the wall. So, next steps for you two? Aurora and Wyatt exchanged a glance. She answered softly, "We're thinking about doing some renovations on the farm. Maybe open it up to visitors. A fresh start, in a way." Trevor nodded approval, a grin tugging at his lips. "Sounds like you're heading in the right direction. About time the Hastings farm flourished again." After Trevor left, Wyatt and Aurora wandered outside, strolling along the orchard rows. Dew glistened on the grass, and the crisp air felt invigorating. They reached a small clearing where old wooden crates were stacked, remnants of harvests past. Wyatt envisioned a future where families picked apples, children laughing, the farm bustling with positive energy. Aurora twirled in a half-circle, brushing away a stray leaf from her hair. "It's so peaceful. I'd almost forgotten how good it feels to walk this land without fear." Wyatt slid an arm around her, careful of his shoulder. "Yeah," he murmured. "Let's keep it that way." In the distance, a gentle wind rustled the orchard leaves and sunlight dappled the ground with shifting patterns of light and shadow. For the first time in what felt like ages, Wyatt saw not the scars of a violent past, but the promise of renewal, a land that had endured generations of storms and still stood proud. Aurora turned to him, her voice softer. "Let's make this orchard into something special again, something that honors your family's legacy and our future." A swell of emotion rose in Wyatt's chest. He bent down, pressing a light kiss to her forehead. "Yes, let's." 2 weeks later, the first fingers of dawn stretched across the horizon, illuminating the Hastings farmhouse with a gentle glow. Wyatt stood on the porch, a mug of hot coffee cradled in his hands. His arm still bore healing scars, but he felt stronger with each passing day. A subtle sense of closure filled the air. Inside, Aurora hustled around the living room, tidying cushions and stacking stray books. Today was a milestone. Roxanne was leaving town, aiming to start anew in a neighboring city where she'd enrolled in a rehab and support program. Aurora had offered a final farewell, uncertain but hopeful. Before long, Roxanne's car pulled up. She emerged wearing jeans and a light sweater, her eyes scanning the farmhouse with a mix of nostalgia and regret. Wyatt stepped off the porch to greet her. Aurora appeared in the doorway behind him. "Morning," Roxanne said softly, lifting a hand in a tentative wave. "Feels strange to say goodbye like this." Wyatt nodded, arms crossed. "You sure about moving away?" She drew in a steadying breath. "Yeah, I need a clean break at least for a while. I'm enrolling in that rehab program focusing on counseling. Get my life straight." Aurora approached, offering a brief hug that Roxanne returned with trembling relief. "That's brave," Aurora said, her voice warm but laced with sadness. "We'll miss you." Roxanne swallowed hard. "You'll be okay without me meddling, trust me." She attempted a small grin. Then she glanced at Wyatt. "You too. Thanks for not giving up on me entirely. It means more than I can say." Wyatt glanced away, the memory of that gunshot still sharp in his mind, but he gave a curt nod. "Take care of yourself, Roxy, and thank you." They exchanged a final glance, loaded with unspoken regrets and gratitude. Then Roxanne slipped into her car, engine rumbling as she backed out of the driveway. Her silhouette faded down the dirt road, dust swirling in the morning light. Aurora let out a shaky sigh. It's going to be strange without her around. Wyatt placed a hand at the small of her back. Might be the best for everyone. She'll get help, and we can breathe easier knowing she's not a reminder of everything. They stepped inside, the farmhouse silent except for the hum of the fridge. Aurora leaned against the hallway wall, looking at Wyatt with an intensity that made his heart ache. "There's one more thing, Wyatt, something we should talk about." He set his coffee mug on a side table, bracing himself. "What is it?" She took a moment, voice wavering with anticipation. "I've been thinking about our future, about possibly having a child or adopting. Everything we went through made me realize how precious family is." Wyatt's eyes warmed, though a flicker of hesitation crossed his face. "Are we ready for that?" Aurora folded her arms, face troubled yet earnest. I don't know, but we can start planning. Maybe see a specialist? If it doesn't happen naturally, we can consider adoption. I just feel this longing to take that next step with you." Relief and fondness mingled in Wyatt's chest. He remembered the nights he feared losing Aurora, the hospital bed where he nearly died. After all that, life felt too short not to embrace love and new beginnings. "Yes," he said, voice thick. "I want that too." A wave of emotion pulled them together. Aurora slid her arms around his waist, pressing her cheek to his chest. He breathed in the light scent of her hair, feeling gratitude surge inside him. Despite the scars, physical, emotional, they were still here, reaching for a hopeful tomorrow. Slipping onto the porch once more, they watched the sunrise swell in brilliant hues of pink and orange over the orchard. The land sparkled with dew, leaves turning golden. Wyatt recalled the orchard plans he'd been drafting on his laptop. A modest farm-stay cabin, a pick-your-own apple event, perhaps a small gift shop. Aurora could handle promotions, Trevor could partner in weekend events, and Felicia might help cater. As for Roxanne, she might return someday, a different person, or maybe not. But they'd left the door open for a fresh chapter if she was willing. Aurora leaned her head on Wyatt's shoulder, her eyes shining. "Look at that sky, it's like the farm's giving us a new beginning." Wyatt curled an arm around her, the warmth of the sun on his face, the comfort of Aurora in his arms. "Yeah," he said softly. "We made it through the storm. Now it's time to grow again." As the brilliant orb of the sun rose fully above the orchard, Wyatt closed his eyes, savoring the moment. The orchard breeze rustled the porch swing, a gentle lullaby to the trials they'd overcome. The dawn light felt like a promise, bright and tender, symbolizing the resilient bond they'd forged amidst betrayal and danger. They stood there, hand in hand, absorbing the quiet triumph of survival and love. Life wasn't perfect, it never would be, but it was theirs to shape anew. And in that final dawn, the Hastings farm glowed, a testament to hope, healing, and the power of second chances.